Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nicole Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 250 of Something Else. Feast your hair holes in this week's episode as we take a look at NWA Total Nonstop Action, episode number 74 from December 3rd, 2003. My name is Aria, and welcoming back to the podcast, she has two good shoulders now, ladies and gentlemen. The one, the only, is Cyndi. Cyndi, how the hell you feeling today?
I'm feeling a lot better. I got a Samus Aran arm cannon now, so I'm feeling good.
Now, this wasn't any kind of like a Henry Rowan Gardner arm surgery. You're not going to be like throwing a 105 mile per hour fastball from the stands at Wrigley Field or anything, are you?
Not in this weather.
I mean, I don't know. You think it might help, the cold weather?
Probably not. I mean, when you get to spring training, things are going to start to warm up again, and that might cause havoc on the shoulder.
Okay. So what we're saying is we need to wait until March to see if you're going to be playing for the Cubs next year.
Barring that, I'll probably land a spotting start in the Colorado Rockies or something.
Now, remember, after Henry Rowan went and won the World Series with the Chicago Cubs, he was somehow allowed to return to playing Little League Baseball.
Well, that's because his massive arm strength was gone. Remember, he lost it at the bottom of the ninth inning in the AL, in the NLCS.
That's true. However, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I haven't gone over the Little League rules, and they probably haven't thought enough to put this into the rule book. I don't think you're allowed to play Little League if you've played in Major League Baseball.
Well, that's never stopped a bunch of Asian players who are 25 to play in Little League.
Yes, but they didn't go from the Chicago Cubs to playing Little League.
Well, they probably went from some Chinese league or the Tokyo League to the Little League World Series. I mean, this happened a few years during the 90s. I mean, we'd see they called it the Far East team, but it's just like China or Japan or Taiwan. And they would just hammer everybody, but it would be found out that the players were like 18, 19 years old or 20 years old.
Who was it? Danny Almonte, that was from the Bronx, that ended up being like 15 or 16 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
Anywho, believe it or not, we are not here to talk about Little League Baseball or movies that somehow center around baseball. Because if that was the case, we'd be talking about the Scout and Little Big League next.
I'll talk about Little Big League all day.
Yeah, I just watched that recently for the first time in probably decades, and it's like that holds up. It doesn't get the love that Rookie of the Year always got, but Little Big League holds up as a pretty gosh darn good little movie.
Yeah, and it took itself serious enough. Like, it wasn't preachy like Angels in the Outfield was, the Disney version, which is a shitty movie.
I still want to know how the Angels managed to never play a road game that year. But
They couldn't afford to film anywhere else but Angel Stadium.
Anywho, TNA episode number 74, December 3, 2003, 3 years to the day before December to Dismember. And this show was not much shorter than December to Dismember. But I will say, this show, I don't know how you felt, this show was much better than December to Dismember.
Oh, by far, it didn't make one person not want to be part of professional wrestling for the next 5-6 years.
We set a very low bar here on the show. TNA number 74 is greater than December to Dismember. But I'll tell you what, I've been enjoying the last couple shows. I enjoyed last week's show. I enjoyed this week's show. We might have to start raising that bar of expectation with TNA here. But we'll go through here and we'll cover what went on this week. Before we do that, we're heading into this week in the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Now, you messaged me that you listened to the show last week. Did you watch the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So,
as you said, I remember we got the start of one of my least favorite angles in the pay-per-view era.
Well, between that and Michael Shane, I'm shocked you haven't revolted against the show already. But continuing on what we talked about last week, TNA is officially moving on without Hulk Hogan, meaning not only is Jarrett versus Hogan not happening, but neither is Bound for Glory. TNA is very aware that the only way that shows a chance as things currently stand is if Hogan is involved. And we'll get to it later on because TNA does talk about it later on in the show. And also, and this is going to be one of those things, we're going to talk about WGN for like the next 2 fucking years, because anytime TNA ever talks about television, WGN seems to be the only channel that's like willing to put them on. And the reason why they never, spoiler alert, never end up on WGN is because WGN wants $50,000 per week. Now, and that right now, TNA is actually strongly considering buying on for $50,000 a week. It is unknown if it would be the Explosion show or an entirely separate show. Now, Dave estimates that TNA is currently losing about $40,000 to $50,000 per week already. So, with the production cost of producing a brand new weekly show, this could very well be tripling their weekly losses if they were to do that.
Or they would give up on the weekly pay-per-view model and just stick with 2 hours on WGN every Wednesday night or something.
Well, as we'll see, and by the way, I think it would, if it were to be 2 hours, I think it would be 100,000 because I think the 50,000 is just for 1 hour. But as we'll see, even when they get Impact, they don't get rid of the pay-per-views right away. And it's debatable whether or not that's actually a smart idea. But yeah, for a while there, for like 3 months, they do the weekly pay-per-views and Impact at the same time before they cut out the weekly pay-per-views in favor of the monthly 3-hour events. But that is a story for later on. But for now, on to the show, where the show did not begin with Jimmy Hart standing outside with Scott Hudson. Instead, it started with Jeff Jarrett in the heel locker room, confirming that Hulk Hogan, Dusty Rhodes, and Jimmy Hart are not here. Tonight, the plan is to take out AJ Styles and Raven. Jarrett says he has some big news, but has to talk to Don Callis first. Now, I'll be honest, and we'll get to it at the end of the show. I don't know what the fuck the big news is, but I'm hoping it's not Kid Kash has joined Jeff Jarrett's team. Spoiler, that's what happens at the end of the show.
No, and it's not that.
Okay, if that's not it, then we don't have big news yet. You know? Anyway, thoughts on this opening promo by Jarrett?
I mean, it sets up what's going to happen throughout the night. I mean, you also forgot about Red Shirts and Abyss. He wants them to take out Raven, and The Gathering, because that's happening tonight.
I said he was in the heel locker room, and to be fair, that was a match that was set up last week.
Yeah, but him telling to take out Raven was part of that segment.
I looked in tonight. The plan is to take out AJ Styles and Raven. But anywho, as you were about to say,
it was still part of the segment, but it's fine. It set up something, so it was a decent start.
Yes. And I had to laugh because it's been a decade now. Geesh. When Lance Storm and Don Callis did Killing the Town, Callis talked about how when he joined TNA, he was getting all this heat, and then Jeff Jarrett immediately put himself right next to Don Callis so he could get all that heat instead. And that's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah.
All right, so we go to the front of the people for our first match. It's an X Division Championship #1 contenders match. Kid Kash versus the Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels versus Low Key. And I wrote, at least it's not another Michael Shane Invitational tournament. They told the story that last week Daniels turned on Low Key, and I'm like, that's not what happened. Like, in what way did Daniels turn on Low Key? Like, he didn't help Low Key, but Daniels was doing commentary. Low Key was outside the ring, and Daniels rolled him back into the ring. Technically, we see that happen dozens of times in wrestling. Hundreds, thousands of times. Somebody has rolled the other guy back into the ring to get them to continue on.
And sometimes it ends in a DQ.
By the way, last week's, it's not even an official rule. It's the rule that I came up with and pulled out of my ass, that if two people interfere in front of the referee, the match becomes a no contest. Technically, two people never interfered in front of the referee during the same match on this show. Even though the main event is one overbooked mess. But we'll get to the overbooked mess in about 40 minutes. So Daniels and Kash tried to double team Low Key from the start, but that didn't work. So they immediately turned this into the three-way. Kash debuted an inverted suplex / shoulder breaker that he called Dead Level, which is the name that he gives his brainbuster finisher in WWE. I know Low Key is a pain in the ass, and I know he has a million Japanese commitments, but ever since he came back a month ago for that Battle Royal, he has added a spark to the X Division. Because, this X Division is dying, but Low Key gave it a little bit of a spark, and things have been going pretty well for a bit here. Kash and Low Key were standing on the middle rope doing a chop battle, and so Daniels zanked them both off with a fall from grace. Kash and Low Key went for a double springboard clothesline from opposite sides of the ring, but Daniels moved so it looked more like that Logan Paul Ricochet spot from the Royal Rumble a few years back.
Oh, yeah.
Daniels tried cheating by putting his feet on the ropes on a rope on Low Key, but that didn't work. And finally, Low Key pinned Daniels with a Key Crusher 99. This was a great match, and if the great match ended right here, I would have been doing backflips. The great match did not end right there, as after the match, Kid Kash grabbed a chair and threw it at Low Key's face and held up his I Fear No Man sign. Of course, that means that Don Harris walked out and finally got his hands on Kash. However, Kash was able to get away. So yes, this great match was a backdrop to an angle with Don Harris. Literally, it would not have been much to beat around this. They could have just had the match. Then Kash could have done the promo backstage, pissed off about losing. Don confronts him, and then Kash runs away so we don't overshadow the great match we just had. Instead, we take the match down a peg because the person who won the match isn't the most important wrestler in the match, and the person that is the most important wrestler in the match isn't the most important person in the segment. So I'll just say this now. it's a good thing this was the opener, and I forgot about it by the time the end of the show came around, because I ended up liking the show a lot more than it sounds like I did, but it's probably because I forgot the post-match of this segment. Especially because Don Harris is going to be here later on. You know, we get a lot of fucking Don Harris on this show. We could have lived to have another day with fucking Don Harris and fucking Kid Kash of all fucking people. I still don't know who the hell Kid Kash pissed off to end up in some of these fucking feuds that he's been in on this show. So I ended up. Oh yeah, and we'll get to it. Low key, they do a fucking injury angle with him. So what the hell was the point of having Kid Kash hit him with a chair when you're just going to do a fucking injury angle with him in a little bit? God damn it. Why did I like this show so much? 7.5 out of 10.
I gave it an 8 out of 10 because I didn't factor the post-match stuff when I graded this as a match. This was one of the best match. If you take the post-match segment out of the segment, it was one of the best matches that we've seen in a long time.
Oh, Lord. It was a very good match, and I really enjoyed it. But the booking of the whole segment brings it down a peg. And like I said, it would not have been hard to just not do anything. Loki could have won, and we could have gone to the back, like we did anyway.
So who was writing at this point? Because we know Russo and Jarrett are so far apart right now that he isn't writing.
It's Dutch.
Yeah,
it's Dutch with a bit of Scott Moore.
So this is essentially just warmed over late stage Memphis.
More or less. Puerto Rico, because, Dutch was always booking Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So Scott Hudson was with AJ Styles. AJ brought up beating Abyss and Lex Luger, saying that it's ridiculous for Jarrett to say he can't compete with the world champion. It's still a weird thing to say since he was literally the world champion for 4 months. Like, I really don't get the point of this angle. I get AJ was a heel when he was the champion, so you couldn't actually say that at the time because it's a babyface underdog story. But the fact is, he was the fucking world champion for 4 months. How can you sit here and do an angle that we don't know whether or not he's good enough to be wrestling with the world champion?
Because according to their mind, the only reason AJ had the belt was, or in Jarrett's mind, the only reason AJ got the belt in the first place is because Vince Russo.
Nope,
and because
we'll see later on, Vince Russo had nothing to do with that match. They showed a replay. Did you see Vince Russo interfere in AJ Styles' world title win later on in this show when they showed AJ winning?
Masterful editing.
Hey, it's the same way WWE's able to keep showing Chris Benoit matches and never actually show Chris Benoit.
Kind of like, I'm gonna segue for a second. They recently, there's a show on PBS called America's Test Kitchen, and they just celebrated their 25th anniversary. The masterful editing job that they did is they never mentioned original host and producer Christopher Kimball once. Like, when they showed...
And why not?
They had a messy divorce about 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think they would have enough respect for the guy after 10 years that they could have said, he was our original host and bigwig, but now that we have these two ladies as our co-hosts and producers, things might happen. But no, like, you might see a piece of Christopher Kimball's arm or back or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Anywho, out came the Three Live Crew to celebrate winning the tag team titles last week. Conan and BG got to do their spiel, including BG doing the ladies and gentlemen shtick that he used to do as the New Age Outlaws. BG said that with these belts, they have more money to buy gifts for their kids and issued an open challenge to anyone to come take toys from their kids. This brought out America's Most Wanted, who apparently want to take toys from children. BG is angry, you see. And why is he angry? Because every time they come out with the belts, America's Most Wanted come out to complain. That takes skill since this is the first time they've come out with the belts. Although technically, I guess that's true. We're 1 for 1 every time Three Live Crew come out with the belts. America's Most Wanted come out to complain. This, weirdly enough, brought out Jeff Jarrett and Don Callis. And I'm like, well, Callis did win his last nationally televised tag team match, so maybe they want a title shot. Jarrett wants to know if the 5 of them are with him or against him. Jarrett said he's got news that will shock the entire wrestling world, ... and then didn't share any news. Harris tried to tell him off, so Jarrett called him a jabroni. Harris called him a disgrace to the NWA and said hell no as to whether or not they're with Jarrett. Jarrett tried recruiting Three Live Crew when Glenn Gilberti randomly came out and said that he and his entire group are behind Jarrett 110%. Simon Diamond took the mic and told Gilberti to never talk for him. Diamond told Gilberti off. Jarrett took the mic, and instead of talking to Diamond, he turned and talked to the camera, demanding a decision tonight. I'm assuming from Simon Diamond, not from the cameraman. This then brought out Eric Watts and Goldilocks, who came out through the crowd. And the good news is, Watts is not dressed like a slob this week. Somebody fucking talked to him after last week, I'm sure of it, because as we mentioned, last week he looked like a fucking hobo, and he was supposed to be the guy in charge of the fucking company. So he books a 3-way tag match, America's Most Wanted versus Simon and Swinger versus Gilberti and Young, and the winner gets a tag team title match, as we find out they'll get it next week. He then says Jarrett is Triple J because he is Jeff Jackass Jarrett. Except Watts apparently can't say the word ass, as he, again, like he did last week, gets the crowd to say ass for him. Watts then said he'd be in AJ's corner for the main event. AJ then ran out and attacked Jarrett, and everyone got held apart. This was a segment. This was a lot of fucking people in one segment.
This was so it felt like it was a half hour, but in reality it was only like about 12 minutes. This is the first time I looked at the clock to see how long of the show was gone, and it was barely 30 minutes. Yeah. There's also a reason why Diamond said don't talk for him and Swinger, because he is tired of Gilberti screwing things up, because he and Swinger believe that Glenn cost him the tag titles because they brought in David Young, and David Young's been fucking everything up.
He doesn't just fuck things up. He got to fuck things all the way up.
Yep.
Then we had a really weird-ass fucking pre-tape. Earlier today, Goldilocks was doing her makeup when Tracy came in and said that this was her locker room and her mirror, and she has to apply her makeup there. And then they argued over whether or not Eric Watts runs the company. And then Tracy just let her have the bathroom and walked away. What the hell's the point of this?
Filler. Like, this was filler. You'll see in the next 2 weeks, because it is December, and because Russo isn't writing. He doesn't. Spoiler alert: he doesn't come back to writing until like mid-January.
He doesn't come back to writing at all until 2006. We talked about this last week. He comes back to do the fucking Director of Authority spot, and then he stays that way till Victory Road, and then he doesn't come back to the company until he starts writing again in 06.
Right, because he does Ring of Glory, which
Well, we are not reviewing that.
I know. I'm just bringing it up because of what he was doing after Victory Road. I saw they did their first show because I also want to talk about other things because I haven't been on the show for 2 weeks and I need to outdo Trey. This was shot in a church with Father James Mitchell as Satan, and all the wrestlers had to wear shirts.
Of course.
It was weird. But nobody cares about the Tracy Goldie segment.
Now let's see here. Ring of Glory. Their first ever event, February 20th, 2005, at the Covenant Life Worship Center in Chickamauga, Georgia. That is apparently a real place.
Yep.
The results of this show: David Young defeats Sonny Siaki, Glenn Gilberti and Mike Sanders defeat Adam Jacobs and Johnny Swinger, Desire defeats Tracy Brooks, Jimmy Rave defeats Kid Kash, Queen Herod defeats Chris Harris, NWA World Champion Jeff Jarrett defeats Elix Skipper, and the main event. This is a main event anywhere in the world here, ladies and gentlemen. Joshua the Carpenter defeats Evil. Now, to fill in a few of those blanks, Queen Herod is apparently Kwee-Wee, a.k.a. Alan Funk, a.k.a. Miss TNA Bruce. And then Evil is not the Evil currently stinking up New Japan. It's fucking Reese of WCW quote-unquote fame.
Can't believe he was still getting work in 2005.
And then you do one other show, and I'm assuming this had to have been like an iPay-per-view or something, because there's matches listed as dark matches, and I know for fuck's sake this did not air on television. But from the Forum in Rome, Georgia, the opening dark match was David Young defeating Elix Skipper, because David Young cannot keep winning matches that are televised. Bull Buchanan defeated Rodney Mack with Jazz. D'Lo Brown and Glenn Gilberti defeated Eric Watts and Mike Sanders. I guess they had a falling out after their big tag team win in February. Matt Hyson defeats Mark Jindrak. Six Pac defeats Kevin Northcutt. A Stairway to Heaven four-way ladder match. Jimmy Rave defeats Air Paris, CJ Summers, and Sal Renaro, who's one of those guys, if you watch Ring of Honor, he was always on there. Rain defeated Jazz, and apparently the televised the main event, because then the two actual main events are dark matches, which are AJ Styles defeats Abyss and BG James defeats Jeff Jarrett in the main event. And that was when Jarrett was the NWA champion. Apparently, he did not put the title on the line for this big Ring of Glory show. But BG James is the final winner of a match in Ring of Glory.
The whole thing is so dumb.
But apparently, you can buy Ring of Glory, the Great Commission, on Amazon for $9.45. Oh my God, I have to read the description of this. There comes a time when a wrestling show, ... simply isn't T just a wrestling show. There comes a time when it isn't T just about outstanding athleticism, unique showmanship, layered storylines, intriguing characters, or even water cooler controversy, but rather about heart, struggle, and the very being of the men and women who perform. You see, sometimes it isn't T just about the quote unquote show. Sometimes it S about quote unquote life. Ring of Glory is quote unquote the Great Commission was just that! Exclamation point. On that very night, wrestlers didn't T just whine or lose, not win, whine or lose, but they have their very lives transformed forever. Superstars who've experienced and represented every major wrestling company in the world converged on Rome, Georgia for an event like no other. The crowning jewel of sports entertainment was a case study in good versus evil in its rawest form, with only one side standing at the end. It is wrestling purity and features a timeless message for all. By the way, all those times that I said isn't T and isn't T and didn't T, it's because there was no fucking apostrophes. There was ISN, two spaces, and then the T.
Man, that Cloud Strike fuck up a couple of months ago really did a number on that Amazon page, didn't it?
And I'd like to point out, as somebody who sells shit on Amazon, you, the person who sells the shit on Amazon, are responsible for writing the product description. Amazon did not fuck up the spelling of any of the words on here, like wine or lose, or halved, not half, or have, halved, HAVD. Controversy was spelled wrong. But I believe Russo had to have written this because I know that it's the person who sells the shit that has to write it, and B, because I've listened to Cornette talk about how poorly he spells for years. Plus, if you go back and read those old WWF magazines, every fucking word that wasn't capitalized is usually misspelled. Some of the reviews of this, MGG wrote "damn horrible," 1 star, wow, just wow, trash. Isn't it a sin to pretend you're God, BTW? By the way, "you're" is spelled wrong and God is not capitalized. Someone wrote in the review. Ring of Glory is the only DVD release ever. What to say? It's Jesus Christ. I swear the only people who bought this DVD are people as fucking dumb and illiterate as Russo.
Pretty much.
Oh my God.
Don't you feel better now that you've had this 20-minute rant on this awful Christian promotion?
Somebody really enjoyed AJ Styles' segment in the extra features and is encouraging us to give it a try. I will not be giving it a try, bro.
I mean, if it's the full AJ Styles versus Abyss match, I mean, it might be worth something.
Something tells me by the way they described it, it was not a match between AJ Styles and Abyss.
Boo!
Anywho, Scott Hudson was now with Chris Sabin and Sanjay Dutt, who had a tag team match with Shane and Shane tonight. Sanjay called his rise an unprecedented rise in TNA. Mind you, he's been here 5 weeks, has won like 2 matches, and is standing next to a guy that won the X Division title in like his 3rd week. Sabin said that maybe it's now time for Ultimate X 2, and Hudson was gobsmacked that Ultimate X could happen again. So
because it was a Don Callis idea, and because Don Callis is a heel, we don't want to give him credit for Ultimate X.
Honestly, it's best to not give Don Callis credit for anything. He already has a big enough head. We then go to the ring for our next match. It's Shane and Shane with Tracy versus Chris Sabin and Sanjay Dutt. Tracy may need to change her name in order to fit into the group.
Tracy Shane.
Yes. Today and Don talked about the possibility of Ultimate X2 and talked about how Michael Shane is the longest reigning X Division champion ever at 15 weeks, which I'm sure, Cyndi, you popped for.
Not
and
really.
This guaranteed he'll make it to 16 weeks, since even though this is a TNA trope to have a tag team match for a title, the title is not on the line in this tag team match.
Right,
They got
because if it was on the line, they'd probably put the belt on Shane Douglas.
While keeping the belt on someone named Shane, of course.
Yeah.
They got the heat on Sabin when Tracy hooked his foot from the outside. Speaking of Tracy, she kept hitching her pants up outside the ring. Remember that weight loss drug that used to sponsor Impact, and the commercials ended with Tracy saying she could barely keep her pants on? Maybe she's already taking it.
Back when they were a WWE sponsor.
Well, while I was making that joke, Sabin deposited Michael on his head with a German suplex and tagged out. Sanjay used the double springboard top rope elbow and then had to patiently wait for Douglas to bounce and roll halfway across the ring. Because, yeah, Douglas is in the middle of the ring. He hits this elbow, and because the spot is that Shane has to be by the ropes so Tracy can put his foot on the ropes, Shane literally has to bounce and roll like 5 feet in order to be close enough to the ropes so Tracy could run around the ring and put his foot on the ropes. And then, while Rudy Charles was randomly admonishing Sabin and Douglas outside the ring, Tracy came off the top rope with a flying vagina to Sanjay, and Michael pinned him after a super kick. After the match, Sabin tried to continue the beating on Douglas, but Michael stomped on him. I do not feel bad for Sabin, who did come back with a pair of DDTs, and then Sabin flipped Sanjay onto them. The Shane and Shane thing is already annoying. 5.0 out of 10.
That's exactly what I gave a 5.0 out of 10. It was a solid tag match. I mean, also, full credit for Shane Douglas actually dropping like 20 some odd pounds after his disastrous Raven feud.
Shane is looking good. He was going. He's got his wind back. He did not vomit during this match. Mm-hmm. Although to be fair, it was a tag match, not a singles match. But again, the bar for Shane Douglas is very low. So yeah, so Shane and Shane pick up the win, and hey, the three of them are getting along for 1 week, which is already, I think, a record for TNA. Like, remember when Robert Roode hooked up with Tracy Brooks, and he spent months and months being like, okay, who's my manager going to be? And then as soon as he introduced her, he's like, yeah, this bitch. I can't fucking stand her. It's like, okay, great.
And then she brings out, and then a few months later, because Tracy's been costing him matches, you mentioned her. It was Rain. Now is Peyton Banks.
Yes. And this is also after she lost a bikini contest to Eric Young.
Vince Russo, we don't miss you. So Hudson's in the back with Diamond, Swinger, Gilberti, and Young. Diamond and Swinger are angry at Gilberti.
You really liked this. And, despite
it was the one moment that I loved.
Despite you saying you were going to send me the clip, you didn't, so I had to pull it up on my own. Let's play the clip that popped Cyndi. So Scott Hudson, Simon, and Swinger are pissed off that it's a three-way match instead of a tag match. And Glenn Gilberti has something to say. Let's go to Scott Hudson with Glenn Gilberti and co.
Guys.
And of course...
Do you think I'm stupid?
Yes! So Cyndi popped for that one. And personally, I thought it was a little contrived to have Simon, Swinger, and Scott Hudson all say that. But hey, Who am I to tell you what you can't enjoy? Anyway, the point of this was Gilberti said that if either of their teams won, even if Gilberti and Young won, they would give Simon and Swinger the title shot, and David Young questioned this.
Because he's like, no, that's fucking dumb.
Well,
because David Young wants a title shot. I mean, he's been in there since what, day 2? Since show 2, and he hasn't got any gold yet.
Who did he lose to on the first show? I mean, he was in one of the matches taped for the next week's show. I think he lost to Apollo. Oh my God, because he fucking was. Was it him whose manager was the brown-eyed girl?
No, that was Cheeks. That was Cheeks. Bobcat was his manager.
Okay. Was it Bobcat? I thought Bobcat was the girl that Taylor Vaughn. No, Taylor Vaughn was BB. Never mind. Okay, yeah. Bobcat was David Young's manager. Back in the day when they were wasting so much money that it was like, hey, everyone's got to have a moderately attractive woman in their corner. They'll get them over, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We in case you thought you heard me incorrectly, there was a man on the show named Cheeks who had a manager named Brown Eyed Girl. Dirty Sphincter was going to come in week 6, but they ran out of money.
And they were going to put the tag titles on them.
Okay, so up next, we got a segment that I liked.
Oh, yeah, this was great.
And I'm not talking about X versus Don Harris. I'm talking about what was before that. So last week, X did that insane senton atomico off the top rope to the floor that Sabin rolled out of the way of, and X crashed onto the hard wooden ramp. And TNA has always sucked about, replaying moments. Basically, the only moment that TNA has ever replayed over and over again is the Elix Skipper Cage Walk Hurricanrana. It's the only goddamn thing that's ever happened in 20 years of TNA that people still remember because that's the only thing TNA ever replayed. Well, they tried for 1 week to replay this crazy senton atomico. And the issue, as I talked with Trey about last week, we've seen PCO now 20 years older doing stuff that's this insanely stupid in 2025, and thus it's not as impressive to see him do it in 2003 when he's 20 years younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not his fault that, because it's still a fucking insanely great, impressive move. And to get it over, they had Mike Tenay, like it was taped earlier in the day. Mike Tenay was standing on the ramp, and they showed poor Rick Santel, who the last time he was on this show was in a fucking sling because that's when Ryan Wilson heaves him 20 feet up the fucking ramp and he separated his shoulder. They showed poor Rick Santel standing on the top rope, and I'm like, oh my God, they're going to have him jump off the fucking top rope to the floor, aren't they? But thankfully, no. He had some sort of camera up there, and they basically showed Rick Santel's view from the top rope to the floor, which I thought was a really nice touch.
And that was about I think Tenay said from the distance from the top turnbuckle to that spot was about 15 feet.
I mean, I think that's an exaggeration. I think it was more like 7 or 10 feet because it is not he bumped right up the start of the ramp, and like it's a small arena. You got the ramp, then you have the mats, and then the ring. But still, I mean, that's still a big ass fucking jump. It's still a far way down because, like, from the floor to the top turnbuckle is, I don't know, a good 7 to 8 feet.
So you add the diagonal angle of it also, it's probably like 10 feet. Probably like 10, 11 feet.
Yeah. Like it is an insane little move there. by Pierre Caroulet. Now, the problem with that whole thing is going to be summed up in the next 5 minutes. Because after putting over this insane move that X did, and putting over like, oh my God, this guy might be a bit of a psycho, risking his body for a match with trying to beat Chris Sabin. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I know this is his last show because we looked it up a while ago, and I knew it was the first week of December is his last show. But I didn't memorize who his opponent was going to be. And so X comes out for his match, and following X is fucking Don Harris. So last week, I complained that X in the X division has kind of jumped the shark, and I felt that he should be in the heavyweight division doing the occasional cool X division move. Be careful what you wish for, Aria. This is seriously one of the worst things I ever did. Like the only thing that may top it was back in 2012. You remember when John Laurinaitis was warning people about making fun of his voice?
Yeah, stop warning my voice. People power.
Yes. So I was at the Raw in Pittsburgh where they fired the Big Show the first time, and he was on his knees crying. Well, after the show, walking to our car, I was doing the John Laurinaitis voice, and if I recall correctly, it was actually a pretty good impression of it. Now, of course, I'm not thinking that John Laurinaitis is aware that I am mocking his voice until I get home the next day to watch NXT, because that's when I was reviewing NXT for the Observer site. And on NXT, my favorite show in the world, in a tag team match, was the tag team of the Great Khali and Ezekiel Jackson. The Great Khali and Ezekiel Jackson as a tag team. This was a real thing that happened.
Who did they wrestle?
I think it was Tyler Rex and Kurt Hawkins. I'd have to go back and check, but that seems to be the likely culprits. But yeah.
Poor Miss Tuft.
Yes. Anywho, so Don hit X with a chair. Oh, by the way, Don Harris had Chris Vaughn in his corner. So those old black shirts getting their TV time this week. Don hit X with a chair outside the ring. Not a disqualification, and no one even questioned it. X used the Senton Atomico inside the ring, and Harris kicked out without a second thought. So much for that move. Don was so winded. Oh my God. So Don Harris has not been wrestling much. I don't even remember the last time he really wrestled before this. It might have been during the Shark Boy feud, and that was almost 6 months ago at this point.
Yeah, that is exactly what it was.
And I couldn't even tell you the last time he had a singles match. Because as Shane Douglas will tell you, there's a big difference between doing a tag match and doing a singles match. And it's been a while for young Donathan Harris. Don was so winded that they did a spot where he was supposed to Irish whip X back and forth and run into the corner with a move. He was so blown up after 2 moves that he had to stand in the middle of the ring and reach out and let PCO come to him. And then the finish, Kid Kash ran in and passed X a chain that he used to knock Don the fuck out for the pin. After the match, Vaughn got into the ring so Kash could fling him out of the ring. Vaughn got back in the ring so Kash could knock him out. Don woke up and punched Kash a few times before Kash ran away. This was a winner leaves town match. As I mentioned, we will not see X again until he takes off the mask and helps form Honor No More in 2022. Somehow, and I don't know, I think I was being generous on his last night. I gave this match a 1.5 out of 10.
I was a tiny bit more generous. I thought it was a 2 out of 10. So a tiny bit generous. All this was just continue the Don Harris Kid Kash feud, which spoiler alert, ends next week in very painful fashion.
Oh, wonderful. See, I was hoping at the end of this show that they'd angle out of that match. But
No, they'll angle out of it at the beginning of next week.
so they don't have the match.
It was a match in name only.
Okay, well, you almost got my hopes up thinking they weren't going to have a match. But, and I get the point is, like, if you're going to devote time to something like this, you have to have a payoff of some kind. But that leads us to our next point. You don't have to have the fucking match. Like, I like the idea that, like, okay, all the black shirts are skinny geeks and they all get beat up all the time. So now they have their big brother essentially comes in to fight their battles for them. And that could be an interesting thing, even with Don Harris. But I don't know who on the roster could have a match with Don Harris. I don't want Kid Kash to have a match with him. And it's not because Kid Kash sucks, it's because the opposite. Kid Kash is really good, and if we put him in situations where he could have really good matches, then, great. Oh.
And like
Scott
Arya,
Hudson.
and like Arya said, X is gone. By the way, Don Harris's final singles match, quote unquote, is next week.
The sad thing is, I know he sticks around enough. Like, because I remember, I don't know exactly what he does, but I know that, like, when they do that fucking Tracy Trinity feud over who gets to sleep with Dusty Rhodes, that Tracy brings in the Heresies and Trinity brings in Phi Delta Slam for a match at Destination X 2005.
It was
And
bad.
I think that's the last time we see the Heresies.
On camera, yeah.
All right, so Scott Hudson, we were told during that match that after this match, Scott Hudson was going to speak to the number one contender to the X Division title, Low Key. Well, we go to the back where Scott Hudson is walking by Abyss's lair because he hears a lot of noise coming from the locker room next to Abyss's lair. And inside said locker room, Christopher Daniels is beating up Low Key with a chair. And then Daniels wished him best of luck in his match next week. That's nice of him. Now, it turns out, and I found this out by reading The Observer, and I'm sure this is where Cyndi will correct me if I'm wrong, Low Key's in Japan next week. So I don't know why they bothered having him win the match, but Low Key will apparently not be wrestling next week against Michael Shane.
That is correct, and Low Key will come back on the 18th. It's either the 17th. Well, the last show of the year.
The 17th, because we have Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, which are best of shows that we will not be watching. Well, I won't be watching. We won't be reviewing. I don't know. You may. I don't know. You could, have some fun doing it.
No, I'll be working. Hopefully.
Well, between now and the end of the year, you want 4 hours to go watch 2 best of shows?
I got better things to do with my time.
I'll be scratching my ass around that time, so yeah, I won't be able to.
Maybe speedrunning Tetris too.
But yeah, so then we go to the ring for our next match: Glenn Gilberti and David Young versus Simon Diamond and Johnny Swinger versus America's Most Wanted in a Tag Team Championship #1 contenders match. The match started with AMW, Simon, and Swinger brawling outside the ring while Young and Gilberti stood inside the ring and watched, which is not the worst strategy ever. Harris randomly began chasing Rudy Charles around the ring. If the referee was anybody else, I would have sympathy, but it's Rudy Charles, and fuck him. The 4 heels all randomly began arguing outside the ring, so Harris did a top rope dive onto all of them. They then all stood up and continued arguing, and I was expecting Storm to do his dive next, but instead Gilberti just rolled into the ring and the match continued. Gilberti accidentally punched Simon, so seconds later Simon and Swinger got in the ring, pulled Harris away, and then began stomping on Gilberti himself. Okay, nitpick time. Major nitpick right here. I get, and they acknowledged in that promo earlier, this was essentially a 4-on-2 handicap match. However, it was technically not a 4-on-2 handicap match. It was a triangle tag team match. 3 teams in 3 separate corners. Simon Diamond got the tag from Glenn Gilberti, but Simon Diamond was not standing in his corner. He was standing in Gilberti and Young's corner. That tag should not have counted.
What
So
are
David Young,
rules?
what was that?
What are rules in professional wrestling?
Well, Trey hasn't finished writing his pro wrestling rule book yet, so I guess we don't know. So in the ring, Simon Diamond was going for a move to Chris Harris, and David Young decided now was the time to be a selfish prick. So he shoved Simon Diamond out of the ring, or out of the way, excuse me, so he could give Harris a spine buster, and that led to Swinger and Young brawling to the outside, so Storm pinned Diamond with a super kick. Nothing wrong with this match. It sets up AMW versus 3LK for the tag belts next week. And we always say AMW, is the best tag team in the territory. If you want to see if they can be true miracle workers, next week that match would be with BG and Conan.
Really, I thought
And
it was with BG and Truth.
Well, yes, but Truth is great, and thus I haven't watched the match yet, but I imagine, especially when Truth is in there, it'll be a quite good match. But the miracle would be if they could have a quite good match with BG and Conan. Anywho,
Well, you don't have to worry about that.
I gave this bout a 4.5 out of 10.
I thought it was a pretty good match, so I gave it a 5 out of 10. So we're on the same page, ironically enough.
What is going on with the world? Backstage, Scott Hudson is now with Raven in the Gathering. Raven said that he enjoyed breaking Ryan Wilson's arm, and he's going to enjoy hurting Abyss and the Red Shirts. And he reiterated that this reunion of the Gathering is a one-time only reunion, while Punk said it won't be.
Yeah, spoiler alert. This exact match will happen not only this week, but throughout the rest of the month.
But. By the way, that was the 5th segment featuring Scott Hudson this week, and this is his last segment of the week, meaning that we decidedly have less Scott Hudson this week than we did last week, where he was on 8 fucking times. Love Scott Hudson, but we do not need him on 8 fucking times.
I mean, one week he'll actually do color commentary. He'll actually do commentary. So he'll be on the whole
Hudson,
show.
No. Scott Hudson will be on camera less when he's doing commentary than he is now when he's doing backstage interviews.
That's true. Although I'll say one thing about Scott Hudson doing commentary. Take a shot every time he goes, ooh!
That must be a new one because he didn't do that in WCW.
You never watched all that amount of Saturday Night and Worldwide.
I was busy not watching Nitro and Thunder to not watch Saturday Night and Worldwide.
So you purposefully missed the two best shows of WCW programming.
I watched enough Saturday Night in 99, 98. You know, when they got that new set for Saturday Night, the new logo that nobody gave a shit about. But yeah. So anywho, 6-man tag action, Raven and the Gathering versus Abyss and the Red Shirts with Don Callis. Northcutt and Legends security shirts were covered in sweat early in the match. I assume there was some kind of security emergency before the match that they had to take care of. Possibly Roddy Piper, D'Lo Brown, and Jerry Lynn were trying to get into the arena, and they had to stop them. So that's why they're all sweaty. I just always have to laugh that Legend went from being a main event wrestler to needing to become a security guard in order to stay in the company. Anyway, Julio got to shine and they got the heat on Punk. Raven patiently waited on the apron for a tag. Don West was worried that Punk may get killed during this match. Now, whether or not you're a fan of CM Punk, imagine the wrestling world, for better or worse, if Don West's fears had been proved here and CM Punk had been killed during this match with Abyss and the Red Shirts. So Raven got the hot tag and he takes out Raven gets a hot tag and takes out all three. Remember how I keep whining about how Abyss is too generous and needs to learn when to sell big? Well, this is an example of when it's okay to sell big for somebody. You know, Raven is a top star. If you're going to put somebody over big, this is the time to do it. Callis slid a chair in, but Raven got it. However, Abyss hit a spear for the win. Yes, Abyss, 6'8", 350 pounds, the monster, son of Jim Mitchell, even though Jim Mitchell's like 8 years older than him. He hit the spear to pin Raven. And they were so confused about this that after the match, we had to have a big six-way brawl, and Abyss gave a black hole slam to Raven. He laid out Punk and Julio with a double choke slam. They pulled out handcuffs and teased handcuffing Raven, but Punk and Julio had chairs and ran them off.
I think what you were underselling is how the spear happened.
Well,
because Raven had the chair. Raven had the chair on his chest, so the bull rush spear from Abyss, chair, Raven, boom.
The gore, but not on the floor.
And to be honest, that spear was pretty poor.
This is another one of those examples of there's nothing wrong with this match. It was a very basic match. It never really went out of first gear. And I'm not sure if you can have a match out of first gear with Northcutt or Legend. I gave this match an even 4.0 out of 10.
That's exactly what I gave it for the exact same reasons, 4.0 out of 10. We've seen that you could get a match out of first gear of Legend. We've had some matches with him and versus Jeff Jarrett where they did get out of first gear. We've never seen it with Northcutt.
And we'll have a decade plus of Abyss to know that, hey, Abyss is pretty good in the ring, you know? So we then get another Rowdy Roddy Piper video, and he is still in his basement in front of a fireplace beating up a dummy while wearing MMA gloves, which I'm sorry, it's 2003. It amazes me that Roddy Piper knew enough to wear MMA gloves. And he announces that he's going to be at the asylum on December 10th and is bringing backup. And much like with last week, this is one of the most coherent Roddy Piper promos we've ever seen.
And he'll squander it next week.
I'm sure of it. And if it's not bad enough that Cyndi and I and Trey was talking about, you know, Piper's bad promos, especially during this period, Mike today openly questioned why they're bringing in Roddy Piper since they won't be able to edit him. There's a very good chance
if you're going to catch that.
Yeah. If you gave Roddy Piper a microphone at 8 o'clock Eastern and told him to talk for however long he wants and then he'll continue the show afterwards, the show would go off the air 2 hours later with Roddy Piper still talking. And none of it would make any sense. So Today in West plugged the website, including the TNA On Demand service that we talked about last week that is going to start this week, that you can buy TNA pay-per-views from the beginning and watch them from your humble abode. And you can also buy the DVDs. I don't think anybody out there is enough of a masochist to go out and buy those old pay-per-views.
But they'll spend the $14.95 to buy the DVDs.
Hey, at least the DVDs, you're in theory getting the good shit.
Especially that Best of the X Division DVD.
Yes, because at least that one, in theory, it's not going to be one match ending with interference after another, because Russo didn't give enough of a shit about the X Division to overbook that one to hell. So next week, they announce Kid Kash versus Don Harris, which by the sounds of it barely happens. Michael Shane versus Low Key for the X Division Championship, which doesn't happen. And Three Live Crew versus America's Most Wanted for the Tag Team Championship, which does in fact happen. At least I'm assuming it does in fact happen.
It does.
Okay. That's swell. And I believe later on they announced that Raven's going to take on Abyss. Actually, not that I just believe it, they actually say it at the end. We'll get to that here. So we go to our main event, which is the NWA World Heavyweight Champion Jeff Jarrett with Don Callis versus AJ Styles with Eric Watts. And as I noted earlier, during the pre-match video package for this match, they managed to show AJ Styles winning the world title and pretending that Vince Russo had nothing to do with it. Russo wasn't shown. He wasn't in the background. He was not. They had no audio, including Russo. It was fucking great. I loved it here. TNA's production staff, it's a win on their end. Now,
so it's a win for Jeremy Borash because that's all it was,
more or less. I want to point out Watts has been at ringside now for 2 other world title matches, and both times he caused the heel champion to win. Or I guess just the heel to win, because the second time was Jarrett winning the belt. So maybe Eric Watts would be best staying in the back. The bell rang and AJ went for a rolling capo kick, but Jarrett rolled to the outside. At this point, as the match was getting going here, Tenay announced that due to Hulk Hogan's knee surgery not going well, he is unable to make any in-ring bookings either domestically or internationally. It was done in passing and so subtle that it was easy to miss. And as noted last week, this was done to A, get out of the Hogan situation, and B, not bury him and leave the door open in case Hogan does come in. And yeah, that's pretty much it here. Hogan, they're dropping all the references to Hogan. They'll bring it up once in a while because they show that clip of Jarrett beating up Hogan 8 million times. But yeah, that's pretty much it for Hogan in TNA here. At least for 6 years. Now, we've mentioned this before. That run up to AJ Styles losing the title was a fucking burial of AJ Styles. And everyone realizes it, and they realize how they fucked over AJ. And this match, I felt especially, was here for rehab. Because AJ got fucked in this whole Hogan build-up. Because as we mentioned, Hogan was not going to come in to wrestle AJ Styles.
No way.
And so AJ got buried down the card in order for Jarrett to look strong. But now that Hogan's not coming in, and really it shouldn't have needed that in order to protect AJ along the way, now we have to rehab AJ. And this match was especially here to rehab AJ. AJ out-wrestled Jeff Jarrett. AJ out-brawled Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett had to use a chair in order to get the advantage. By the way, the titles change on disqualification in TNA. Referee Andrew Thomas, watching this the entire time, did not even hint at warning Jeff Jarrett, hey, don't break the rules. But, and then, because AJ was doing what Jarrett does but better, Jarrett did a crossbody out of the ring. Now, the crack TNA production staff missed it. And I am confident this was not as good as when AJ does one, despite the fact the director was focused on the wrong thing. AJ hit a powerbomb near the ropes, and Callis put Jarrett's foot on the ropes. showing once and for all that Sanjay Dutt is worse than AJ Styles. Watts ran around and punched Callis, which distracted the referee. Jarrett went for the guitar, but AJ gave the guitar a Pele kick, which was a nice spot. The referee saw AJ holding the guitar, and for a moment, I'm like, oh my God, they're going to fucking disqualify AJ. But nope. So the referee admonishes AJ, and while the referee's doing that, Eric Watts gets in the ring and gives Jarrett a choke slam. AJ makes the cover. Jarrett does that annoying kick out he does, where he doesn't even kick out. He puts his arm in the air.
I hate that spot so fucking much.
I literally just pantomimed doing that and realized I was doing the Heil Hitler sign.
Yeah, that's bad.
Doing that. Yeah. But yeah, he doesn't lift his shoulder up the mat. He doesn't actually kick out. He just puts his arm in the air. Like, I know it's his fucking company, but there's part of me that's like, dude, somebody talk to this motherfucker, but nobody ever does because he always does that.
He still does it to this day.
I mean, when the hell was the last time he wrestled? So the red shirts ran in, then the Gathering ran in, then Watts chased Callis backstage, Abyss ran in, AMW came in and ran him off, AJ accidentally gave Andrew Thomas a Pele, Jimmy Hart ran in and ripped his shirt off, showing a referee shirt. AJ did a springboard senton atomico, but Kid Kash ran in to pull Jimmy Hart out of the ring and give Jarrett another guitar, and Jarrett guitared AJ for the pin. In case you didn't keep count, that was 11 run-ins on the main event, which is shockingly not the all-time record in TNA. That may still be like 13.
17.
No, it was Raven Jarrett. They did 13 run-ins on that match.
I thought it was 17 for that match, but give or take a couple, I guess.
So after the match, Kash let it be known that he's on Jarrett's side. I wrote, is this Jarrett's big surprise? Now, I will say, here's the positive of this. And this tells you that Vince Russo is not a part of this company. They knew, obviously, because wrestling is not a shoot, bro. They knew that there was going to be 11 people interfering in this match. And thus, how much interference was on the rest of this show, Cyndi?
Once with Tracy.
And that's it. Yeah. So Jeff Jarrett is your winner, 7.0 out of 10.
Trying to remember what I forgot to write a grade for this, but 7 out of 10 feels right. And if you weren't going to bring anybody new in to help out Jarrett, Kid Kash is probably the best person that actually aligned with Jeff Jarrett because we've seen him be an absolute asshole. And it just makes sense for him because he would be one person to weasel his way into getting Jarrett's help, Callis' help, Redshirt's help to take care of his Don Harris problem. And he's got job security.
Where the hell is Sonny Siaki? Phrases no one has ever said before.
I have no idea. I think he comes back January. With Trinity.
Lucky. So after the match, Raven was back in his locker room challenging Abyss to a match next week. He plans on causing internal bleeding, which is how the show ended. What a weird thing to plan on causing. So that is how the show ended. So giving us our end of the show rating here, average match quality, a 4.92, higher than average. Hey, that's almost 2.5 stars a match.
Yeah.
Overall enjoyment, 6.5 out of 10. Another solid show. We've seen these shows improve since Russo was out. It was a slow transition, but we are now at the point where Dutch is putting together good shows, and in many ways, it's almost come out of nowhere. And then future build. There is a 6.0 out of 10. There is a lot on this show that I like. The thing that I continue to have no interest in is Kid Kash versus Don Harris, and this is where I wrote, but hopefully they either angle out of the match next week or it's one and done.
And they kind of, like I said, they kind of do a mishmash.
Well, that gives us a overall rating of a 5.81. That makes this show a success in the world of TNA.
I have to say this. Isn't this like the best Jeff Jarrett match we actually watched?
I can't say I remember anything that really stands out. I think this is pretty much an average rating for Jeff. You know, that 6.57 area.
Just thought it was interesting. Because normally we gave him like fives, and like a 6 here and there because of all the interference and bullshit.
I mean, the thing is, again, it's like everybody sit here and think like, what would be a better match, especially in TNA? It's like he hasn't, you know, I don't even know. It's like he never wrestled Jerry Lynn, so Jerry Lynn did not carry him to a, 5-star match. Actually, he had that fucking tag match, which I guarantee I didn't like more. I just want to look Jarrett and Raven. I gave a 6.0. And I don't know. That's probably the only thing I could think of that Jarrett's done that could have been a higher rating. But yeah, so this probably is Jeff Jarrett's best TNA match, at least ratings wise.
Yep.
So, anywho, that's gonna do it here. That'll wrap things up here for this fine program.
And it actually was a fine program.
Yes. Any final thoughts yourself?
Let's just hope this with us or against us angle doesn't get any more bullshit.
Well, considering that, Planet Jarrett is a thing more or less for like years from now, until Jeff Jarrett's wife is about to die, um, we have a long way to go.
Yep.
It's a mean thing to say, but it's true. It's like, it's the TNA version of the Triple H Reign of Terror. Like, when people talk about how, 2003 was a shitty year for wrestling, and we're like, oh, what do you mean? There was this, that, and the other thing. It's like, you're not, like, tell me you didn't watch without telling me you didn't watch. It's like, everyone's like, oh, well, SmackDown had Benoit and Angle and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, first of all, that era that you're thinking of was the year before, 2002. But even with, Benoit and Angle, go back and watch SmackDown and tell me what the main angles on those shows were. Vince versus Stephanie, Sable versus Stephanie, Vince versus Zach Gowen.
Vince versus Mr. America.
Yeah. This was all shit that was done on SmackDown during this period of time.
Like, unless you're in the Northeast and you got to go see a lot of the Ring of Honor shows, or you were buying all those Ring of Honor DVDs, 2003 was a shit year for wrestling.
Indeed it was. You suddenly see, like, people complain about how Dave and Brian used to talk about UFC constantly and Pride constantly in the fucking Observer and Figure 4 Weekly. This is why wrestling really sucked around this time. So, anywho, I guess that's gonna pretty much do it for this show here. Anything else you want to say to the fine listener out there?
Just glad to be back, and don't worry. You only have to deal with me for 2 more weeks before we go on vacation for 2 weeks.
I was going to say, what the hell's happening now?
We're not doing shows Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve.
We are not. We are not. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show. And we'll talk to you again in 7 days.
Glenn Gilberti really is fucking stupid.